But in the meantime, we've had our hands on Halo Infinite right now. Released December 8th, especially the campaign came on Game Pass day one, which has been amazing. First Halo in 6 years. I'm still like not even into the main game yet. I've only played the first 2 missions, but you finished the campaign already?
Yeah, I beat the game on Legendary difficulty, and it was a wild ride. Honestly, though, the Legendary difficulty is about where it is in Halo Reach. Like it's not that bad, which is actually, it made it even funnier when I would see online there'd be people complaining that like the bosses are broken and that the game's like too hard on heroic difficulty. I'm just like, I was like, I don't know. Like on heroic difficulty, I've been playing up in the bedroom on a controller, just kind of casually at night before bed, and I die when I make a very blatantly dumb mistake because I'm trying something crazy. But other than that, I'm basically untouchable on heroic difficulty. So I'm like, I don't know what these people were expecting selecting anything above easy if they think heroic is like a broken difficulty. Because I'm like, yeah, like even Legendary is not unreasonable. Like I think if you've ever beaten a Halo, any other Halo game, if you've ever beaten it on heroic, I think you can beat Infinite on Legendary. And I would say the same about Reach.
Okay. You enjoying playing it more on controller or mouse and keyboard?
Mouse and keyboard. And I'll tell you why. The grappling hook that you get in this game, no, because if you haven't even got to Zeta Halo yet, you don't quite understand what I'm about to say. Once you get the ability for it that recharges it 40% faster, the movement in this becomes an Attack on Titan video game. And I was just like, wait, hold on a second. It recharges and I can fire the grappling hook again before I hit the ground if I just shot myself up to a tree? This changes everything. And the next thing I know, I'm like scaling up mountains by like launching myself up a little bit, having the physics kind of float me in the air and then shooting up a bit further. You can kind of do the Skyrim, I'm just going to keep pressing jump and hope I make my way up this mountain, but you're doing it with a grappling hook and it actually feels good to play.
Yeah.
Because it's the physics actually carrying you up. It's not the game realizing, oh, okay, player press jump, let's put him one little bit up. It's you can actually like feel the weight of, depending on where exactly you shoot and what angle you get. When you're going through the trees, it's kind of crazy too, and the way you can utilize that in combat is really, really awesome. Like there was one boss where, actually I think this might have been the same post that I was reading on Facebook where a guy was complaining about heroic difficulty being broken. There's this one boss who has a gravity hammer, and you're in a kind of C-shaped, I guess, I think it's a excavating machine of some kind, like it shoots lasers into this thing, but you're in basically the control room of a crane, but it's this big like C-shaped room. And there's a guy with a gravity hammer in there that has this attack where he can jump and like dash towards you in midair and then hit you with the gravity hammer. So the way you need to get around is by shooting the ceiling with the grappling hook and firing yourself out of his range, and then turning around and giving him some headshots like with the battle rifle or whatever you have in the room that you can find to kill him with. And it's just like, man, the second that starts to click, and especially if you get decent, this I think is easier to do on PC because the different abilities that you have are mapped to the buttons, whereas on console you have to hit, I think it's right on the directional pad and then up, down, left, or right to select one of the 4 different things, but it's like right to open up your abilities menu, and the grenades are kind of the same, it's just you hit left first. And that I could imagine would be pretty cumbersome, though I haven't gotten that far with the controller, so I don't really know. But once you get good at like switching between the drop shield that you have come up and the little threat sensor beacon and this dash that you have, like basically all the items from multiplayer. Yeah. It's those, but you can, in the open world, collect these Spartan upgrade cores that give you stronger abilities, and as you upgrade these abilities, they become incredibly valuable. Like way more so than they are in multiplayer. For example, the drop shield, the first few upgrades of any ability, it's all just make the thing stronger, like better, bigger shield, stronger shield that lasts longer, faster recharge. But the 4th upgrade of each one does something crazy to them. So for the drop shield, it makes it so that your shield's electrified. So every single shot that you send through the shield does shock damage as well. So it's just like, man, I'm like applying like RPG style damage systems or like Destiny elemental damage in a Halo game. Like, this is wild. And the electric shock damage is kind of like the disruptor or the shock rifle, where it like does chain lightning. Yeah. So you can just clear entire areas if you have that upgrade, because it's like, okay, now anyone I'm shooting, I'm doing damage to everyone around them. It's nuts. The dash, like the thruster ability, when you get the 4th upgrade on that one, it turns you stealth, like invisible, for a short amount of time. So especially on the final boss, not the final boss, sorry. Although I kind of used it on that person as well. I'm not going to say who. But the second last boss, which is kind of, you sort of think it's going to be the last boss fight, that I don't think I would have been able to even finish it if I didn't have the dash and the invisibility that made it so that, oh, he lost track of me. That's pretty good. And which ones? The threat sensor makes it so that it's constant. So the first upgrade of it, or the first version of it, it just gives you little pulses where you can see people through walls. The third one makes it so that it's constant. So you're always just seeing whoever's in this little threat sensor bubble. And the 4th one shows you enemy health. I can't tell you how much less annoying it was fighting the hunters in this game when I could tell exactly how much health they had left. Because I knew what weapons were doing what kind of damage, where I was shooting them. And this is the first Halo game where when you're fighting the hunters, you can't really do the hunter dance. The hunter dance is kind of a thing you do in Halo where you bait a melee attack from them, and then as they lunge forward at you, you kind of step to the right, and then they overshoot you and they expose their weak spot, and then you shoot it. I could not get that to work even once. So I was like, oh man, I can't hunter dance. Like, what do I do? I found out that spiker shots to the head work very well, and the Ravager's area of effect damage. Like that, that weapon that's almost straight useless in multiplayer?
Yeah.
Like that does the little damage over time field.
Yeah.
That is incredible to use against hunters in the campaign. So I guess like what I'm trying to say is the gameplay isn't just the multiplayer gameplay, but you're fighting against enemies. There are some pretty significant differences that I think work very well to make it feel like the campaign is when you're playing as Master Chief. It's like you're one of the other Spartans and you can still do some of this stuff, but you can't do all of it and have it be super powered versions of it because he has crazy upgraded armor. It sucks that you haven't gotten to Zeta Halo, because I think the most sort of important thing to talk about when it comes to Halo Infinite is the structure of the missions. And right now, if you just played the first 2 missions,
they're just campaign mission.
Yeah, it just seems like a normal Halo game, right?
Yeah. But like, I know it becomes the open world once you get to Zeta Halo.
Yeah, and I don't think that unlike most open world games where, I don't know, if you've played one, you kind of have played them all, sort of. Yeah. Like, I mean, you
like Far Cry.
You sort of understand their structure, and I think a lot of people will be going into Halo Infinite expecting something maybe a bit different than what it is, but at least I really like what it is or how they structured it, because I think it strips away a lot of the stuff that annoy me about open world games. And I mean, this is again, it's a personal preference thing, so I'm not saying that this is why Halo Infinite is better than, say, Far Cry 5 or 6 or whatever, but it's why I had more fun playing it personally, because there's no kind of BS activities or not necessarily all of it's BS in Far Cry, some of it's fun, but like hunting and skinning animals to get different upgrades, or climbing towers, or now here's a race mission that you can go do over here, or I can go play poker with this guy. Like, all of that stuff is kind of stripped away, and it's like, hey, welcome to Zeta Halo. You do Halo combat here. That's all you do. You're Master Chief.
Yeah.
You fight who are basically the Covenant. They're sort of like the First Order to the Empire, but the Banished are effectively the Covenant as far as how it is to fight them. And it feels really good to do that. So we're just going to give you a bunch of excuses to go do this thing. Like, it really kind of hammers home the kind of classic thing that Bungie always said about why Halo is fun to play. That they're like, Halo, it just nails the 30 seconds of fun. That guns, grenades, melee, and these enemy types is 30 seconds of fun that you do over and over and over again. But because that 30 seconds is so good and so flexible, it feels like you're doing a bunch of other different things, but ultimately it's like, no, you're knocking down shields, you're headshotting enemies, you're throwing grenades, and you're meleeing people, and that's pretty much it. But you do it a lot in this game, and there's a lot of really, really interesting scenarios, and I think this is, again, a thing that's sort of I like it when games do this. You can approach those scenarios in many, many different ways because of the way the game is structured and because of the mobility that you have in it. So you can see an enemy forward operating base, which is the equivalent of a Far Cry tower, because it's basically just your fast travel point and you have to unlock it, and it's sort of a little bit of an outpost because it's like, hey, there's a bunch of enemies, we gotta kill those enemies and then take over this little base. And that sounds like it's not very interesting, but it's like, okay, well, I could spawn a warthog at one of my other bases, and every one of your bases has a bunch of Marines standing around it too, like just kind of hanging out, and they'll hop in your warthog or in the gunner seat of your Scorpion or whatever, and you can roll in with vehicles, or you can just Spider-Man your way around the perimeter of it, take one out, and then I don't know, like go for the strong enemies with sniper rifle. Like, you can just kind of decide, hey, here's how I'm going to do this, and then you can just do it. And if there's any viability to your strategy at all, it's gonna work. And like, even on legendary difficulty, that's pretty impressive, because there's lots of first-person shooters where it's like, here is the solution. Do the solution, and if you raise the difficulty, you'll die faster and the enemies will die less fast, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And whereas here, it's like, the enemies using more grenades and having more power weapons on the higher difficulties, it actually like changes your plan. It's like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, what do I have on me, and how can I use what I have on me to either get better equipment or actually finish this fight? And I don't know, I think that you really kind of have to play the campaign of Halo Infinite to really get what I'm talking about, and you may disagree, like, because I think that there's definitely an argument to be made that the game is like empty, like it's an open world with not really anything in it, like I said, except for Halo combat. I just happen to really like Halo combat, and I can see when they present interesting scenarios, and I appreciate playing through them. Whereas some people have the reaction to Halo combat, it's like, it's just kind of slow, and if you're playing on an easier difficulty, it's like, it's just shoot and press the trigger until all the enemies fall, like it's not really that big a deal. But it's like, well, higher difficulty Halo, though, is it's kind of like a combat puzzle. And
well, if anything, the multiplayer has shown that like people enjoy this style of combat, right? Like, they don't like the... If Halo was 30 seconds of combat, then like Call of Duty is like 5 to 10 seconds of combat, right? Exactly. And like people like are just, not that people are tired of that, just people, I feel like we're missing the Halo version of this, right? And it's the same with, I know like I talk about it more on a multiplayer aspect of it, which I've been loving. Like, there have been a couple of nights this week where I'm like, all right, let me get onto this story, and I'm like, I'm just gonna one game of ranked, just one game, and then that turns into like 4 hours. You're like, oh man, totally should have stopped at some point. Yeah. But the gameplay is just that much fun. You probably could have finished the campaign in the time you've been playing. I honestly didn't play 4 hours straight, but like, you know what it's like when multiplayer hours just disappear, right?
Yeah.
And I think
it can get very easy to lose track of time while you're playing multiplayer, for sure.
But I also think that once I get to this open world as well, like, I think this is just bare bones Halo Infinite. I think they'll be adding to it. Like, this is... The word infinite is there for a reason. Like, I think they don't plan on making another Halo game for a while. It's just going to be like adding to this game, adding to this game. And from what it sounds like is that the base is amazing. Now let's just see what happens from here on in, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot they can do with it and a lot of places they can go. I think that story-wise, they're in a much better place at the end of this game than they were at any point in Halo 5. I think that it did have some of the, I don't mean it to sound as bad as this, but some of the Rise of Skywalker problems of just like, okay, people really hated that last game that we made. We gotta kind of fix it and turn some of this stuff around because no one likes the direction the story's going into. And you can definitely feel that in the way the story unfolds. In fact, like, a lot of people I've seen, like even on Twitter and stuff, have said like, yeah, so like what happened to Spartan Locke and like all of Fireteam Osiris and everything. And I think actually Shiny FX, who like he does a podcast with Literature Devils, another YouTuber, I shared a shot of one of the enemies in the game who has a Spartan Locke from Halo 5's helmet just on his shoulder. I was like, oh, so I guess Locke's dead. They sort of just did that off camera, and he was the main character in Halo 5, so it's like, oof, well, man, rough. But, I mean, overall, I thought the story was pretty good. The weapon, who is the sort of Cortana-looking girl that's in the trailers, she's sassy, and she's really bubbly and sweet, which is kind of a contrast to Cortana's. Cortana's more sort of sultry, like femme fatale, like not really femme fatale, but you know, kind of more serious and mature, dry humor. Yeah. And I think that it's kind of neat that it's sort of the same voice, like it's the same voice actress, but she sounds different, and she sounds like she's very much a different character. There is a strong element of like, okay, so should we just call her New Cortana? It's like, well, I mean, yeah, like that's kind of what she is, but the thing that makes it not just, oh, it's Cortana's just back, is their personalities are actually quite different. The only other character really in the game, like that's not an enemy, like friendly character who has a personality, is the pilot, the sort of Antonio Banderas sounding guy that's also in the trailers. It's really just those three characters are the three characters that are in the game as far as friendlies go. And you know, I mean, it keeps it simple. And that's maybe not super interesting, and I wouldn't say this is anywhere close to being like the best Halo campaign from a story standpoint. But it's like, let's kind of go back to basics. Halo, like Master Chief's stranded on a ring, shit's going down on the ring. They're gonna solve the situation and maybe set up some future events. And I think that keeping the multiplayer free to play and being supported by microtransactions and just giving the story team, with hopefully Joseph Staten on board in a more permanent way at 343, just the ability to write whatever the hell he wants and the team as much time as they need. Like if in 2 years we get Halo Infinite Campaign 2 or whatever they're going to call it, Halo Infinite, and then a subtitle like Halo Infinite Resurrection, I don't know, Rising.
But they can also just do like, it doesn't even have to be like a DLC like campaign. It's just like, hey, granted I don't know how it ends, but I could just imagine like, hey, there's something we need you to do on Zeta, like, again, I don't know how it ends, or hey, we need you to do this in some planet close by, or on another Halo ring.
There's 3 very good member berry awards. I'll say that much.
There we go.
But anyways, but you're right. Like they do set up like, hey, there's still some things going on here, and the series can kind of go in a new direction. But I think that I was more talking about from a business plan standpoint. I think that they started releasing every couple of years a new Halo campaign that was like $30 or $40, whatever it would be, like not full price, $70 game.
Very similar to Destiny, like what Destiny's been doing with Destiny 2.
Exactly, and I kept on thinking, I was like, wait, what if Destiny's expansions didn't come with strikes, didn't come with raids, didn't come with a whole bunch of new weapons and stuff? It was just, it's only story missions, but they're really good.
Yeah.
And they're worth playing just on their own and worth the money to pay for. Because I think that was always the problem with, again, I haven't played Destiny since...
we've lost off Destiny 2 for a while now. Forsaken was the last one I played.
I didn't even play Forsaken. That was the one I stopped before because I didn't finish the Warmind DLC. Yeah. And that's the thing, because like I think it was Warmind, right? The one, the second after the Mercury one. Anyway,
sure.
There was like I just couldn't really get into the story, so I was sort of burning out on Destiny anyways. And I think if the story missions in Destiny told a compelling thing where it's like every year or so a Destiny expansion comes out and I can play it for 6 to 10 hours and get like a really solid campaign with very good gameplay that's already been set up, I'd be up for that. And I think that Halo's in a good position to be a very interesting type of live service, especially if it's like boxed products, or effectively boxed products, like campaigns that it's like you pay for this campaign and then free multiplayer. Which means, again, we've talked about this before in our multiplayer impressions, the no barrier for entry, you can just play Halo Infinite multiplayer if you want. That's really, really cool. And if we're not going to go too far into the multiplayer because we talked about this stuff. If they fix the microtransactions and the progression in Halo Infinite's multiplayer, I think they could find themselves in a really good spot over the next, honestly, like 10 years if they do it the same way Destiny did, but kind of better in a way because they can learn from Destiny's mistakes. It'll be an interesting time to be a Halo fan. I guess that's probably the most important thing to say.
And not to mention like Microsoft backing you up versus Bungie's just on their own now with their own little problems going on right now. Like Microsoft's 343 seems like in a much better position to do this right now.
Well, and think of how, from like a marketing standpoint, if you're pulling all these people in with free to play Halo Infinite multiplayer, and it's like, oh wait, hold on, there's 4 Halo campaigns. Say we're in 2026 or something like that. There's 4 Halo campaigns that I can play. How much are they? It's like, well, I mean, they're, I don't know, like $20-$30 each now, but you could also just sign up for Game Pass and
just play them all.
Just play them, and it's like, wow, yeah, that's not a bad spot they're putting themselves in.